Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're trying to cut through some of the buzz around generative AI, these large language models everyone's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We want to dive into something really fundamental. How do we actually, figure out if these tools are any good, if they're up to snuff before they get rolled out everywhere?
Exactly.
Think of this as like a quick guide to understanding how we make sure this tech is reliable, effective, without drowning in technical jargon.
Right. Because we've all seen those flashy demos, haven't we, where they generate text or code and it looks, well, effortless.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff sometimes.
But what's really crucial and maybe less visible is the rigorous evaluation that has to happen behind the scenes. That's how we know if these models are actually ready for prime time for practical use.
Okay.
So our mission today really is to unpack that process. It's often called LLM evaluation. We want to give you a clear sense of why it's so important and, what the main ways of doing it are.
And we're drawing on some insights here.
Yes, exactly. We're pulling from a really interesting discussion on the AI Edge podcast. They had an AI researcher and product advisor on sharing some very practical, sort of boots on the ground perspectives.
Got it. Okay, so let's unpack that term you used, LLM evaluation, or LLM Evals. What does that actually mean in simple terms?
Sure. So, at its core, LLM Evals are basically the methods we use to measure how well a large language model does specific things, tasks we want it to perform.
Like what kinds of tasks?
Oh, it could be anything from answering questions accurately to summarizing a big chunk of text, maybe generating computer code.
Okay,
And the main goals, the aims of these evaluations are really to quantify how well it performs. How accurate is it? How fair is it? Is it safe to use? All before you let it loose.
right, right. Quantify. Performance, fairness, accuracy, safety. That makes sense. And I guess that connects to concerns people might have about whether they can really trust AI apps.
Absolutely. Reliability is key.
So why is this evaluation step so critical? I mean, apart from just knowing if it works.
Well, it's crucial because if you don't evaluate properly, you run into potentially big problems. Things like hallucinations, where the AI just makes stuff up.
Ah, yes, I've heard about that. Sound bad.
It can be very misleading. Or you might get biased outputs, reflecting skewed data it was trained on. And in sensitive areas, think like healthcare or finance, deploying a poorly evaluated model could even lead to, well, legal issues.
Okay, so avoiding hallucinations, bias, legal trouble. That seems pretty important, especially if you want to be well informed and, avoid being misled by AI.
Precisely. It's about building trust and ensuring responsible deployment.
So how do the folks building these things actually test them? What are the main techniques they use?
There is several key methods, and they're kind of evolving too. One interesting one that's getting a lot of attention is called LLM as a judge.
LLM as a judge? What's that?
It's basically using another LLM, often perhaps a more powerful or specialized one, to automatically rate or rank the answers or outputs generated by the model you're testing.
Huh. So you use one AI to grade another AI's work, like marking its homework.
Pretty much, yeah.
What's the appeal of that? Why do it that way?
Well, the big advantages are speed and scale. You can evaluate a massive amount of output really quickly, much faster than having humans look at every single response.
Okay, speed and scale. Makes sense. But are there downsides?
Definitely. A key limitation or something to watch out for is the potential for bias or maybe shared blind spots.
Shared blind spots.
Yeah, if the judge LLM was trained on similar data or using similar techniques as the model being tested, well, it might make the same kinds of mistakes or overlook the same types of errors. It might have similar biases baked in.
Right. That makes sense. It's like having two students who studied from the same dodgy textbook, grading each other's papers. They might both miss the same fundamental error.
Exactly. That's a good analogy.
Okay, so that's one method. What's another approach?
Another really crucial one is gathering direct user feedback. This is, well, pretty much what it sounds like.
Just asking people what they think?
Essentially, yes. You have actual users interact with the LLM, use it for its intended purpose, and then you collect their feedback. This could be simple like thumbs up, thumbs down ratings,
Okay.
or it could be more detailed comments asking them why they liked or disliked a response.
You feels very grounded. You're seeing if it actually works for real people in real situations.
That's its main strength. You get invaluable insights from actual real world use cases. It tells you how the model performs out there in the messy reality, not just in a controlled lab setting.
but I imagine that has its own challenges.
It does. A big one is standardizing the feedback. Different users have different expectations. What one person considers a minor error, another might see as a major failure.
Right?
So getting a really consistent, objective measure of performance just from user feedback can be tricky. It's often more qualitative.
Okay, so we've got AI judges for speed and human users for that real-world perspective. What else is in the evaluation toolkit?
Then there are golden data sets.
Golden data sets. Sounds valuable.
They are, in a way. Think of them as carefully curated sets of prompts or questions where the correct or ideal answer is already known. These answers are usually verified by human experts.
Ah, okay, so it's like an exam paper with a pre-made answer key.
Exactly like that. You feed the prompts from the golden dataset to the LLM you're testing, and then you automatically compare its answers to the known gold standard answers.
And the benefit there is.
Consistency. It's a huge benefit. Every model gets tested against the exact same benchmarks. This allows for really direct, objective comparisons between different models or different versions of the same model.
Okay, that sounds useful for tracking progress. Any drawbacks?
Well, a potential drawback is that these carefully created data sets, while consistent, might not fully capture the complexity and sheer messiness of real-world language and user queries.
Right. The questions people actually ask might be weirder or more ambiguous than what's in the perfect test set.
Precisely. Real-world data is often unpredictable, so performance on a golden data set doesn't always perfectly predict performance in the wild.
That makes sense. Useful, but maybe not the whole story. So AI judges, user feedback, golden data sets. Anything else major?
Yes, there's a fourth key approach which focuses more on business metrics.
Business metrics. How does that fit in?
This shifts the focus a bit. Instead of just looking at, say, linguistic quality or factual accuracy, it looks at the actual impact the LLM has on tangible business goals.
Ah, okay. Like what?
Like tracking conversion rates. Did using an AI chatbot lead to more people signing up or buying something? Or maybe time spent on a page, are people engaging more with AI-generated content? Or even changes in customer satisfaction scores?
I see. So it's not just about whether the AI can write a decent summary, but whether that summary actually helps a user achieve something or makes them happier with the service.
Exactly. It ties the LLM's performance directly to real-world outcomes and value.
I like that. It brings it back to usefulness, doesn't it?
It really does, and it highlights something important. A model might seem incredibly capable based on, say, a golden data set, but if it doesn't actually help achieve the business objectives, well, is it really useful?
Good point. A technically brilliant model that doesn't actually help anyone isn't much good in practice.
Right. A perfectly written response that doesn't solve the user's problem isn't a success.
Okay, so let's say we've done our homework. We've used a mix of these evaluations, maybe LLM as a judge, some user feedback, act against golden data sets, looked at business metrics, and we feel pretty good. We deploy the LLM. Is that it? Is the evaluation job done?
Oh, definitely not. That's really just the beginning in some ways. One of the absolute key best practices when you put these models into production, into real world use, is continuous monitoring.
Continuous monitoring.
Yeah. Just because a model passed all the tests initially doesn't mean it will stay that way. Performance can drift over time.
Why would that happen?
Well, the data it encounters in the real world might change, user behavior might shift, new edge cases might pop up that weren't in the initial testing, so you need to keep checking.
So it's like servicing your car regularly, even after it passed its initial inspection. You have to keep checking the oil, the tires.
That's a perfect analogy, exactly like that. You need ongoing checks to ensure it's still running well and safely.
Makes sense. What else is important after deployment?
Another vital practice is actually combining evaluation methods on an ongoing basis. Relying on just one metric, say just the LLM-as-a-Judge score, can give you a really limited, maybe even misleading picture.
Right, you might miss something important.
Exactly. So using a mix, maybe automated checks combined with periodic reviews of real user interactions and feedback, gives you a much more holistic view, a more well-rounded understanding of how it's really doing.
Get multiple perspectives, like getting a second opinion on something important.
Precisely. And another crucial piece, especially post-deployment, is ongoing checks for bias and fairness.
Ah, yes, bias. How do you monitor that?
Well, it means actively testing how the model performs for different groups. You need to look at outputs across various demographics, gender, language, maybe age groups to see if there are disparities, and then work to mitigate them. It's not a one-time check.
Okay, so continuous monitoring, combining methods, constantly checking for bias. Anything else?
Yes, one final really critical point is to close the feedback loop.
Close the feedback loop. What does that mean?
It means taking all that data you're collecting, the monitoring results, the user feedback, the bias checks, and actually using it.
Using it how?
Using it to improve the system. That might mean retraining the model with new data, refining the prompts you give it, maybe tweaking the user interface. The feedback shouldn't just sit in a report, it needs to drive improvements.
Got it. So it's a continuous cycle. Evaluate, deploy, monitor, gather feedback, improve, and then repeat.
Exactly. It's an ongoing loop of refinement.
Wow. Okay. That sounds like quite a lot of work. It's definitely more involved than just launching an app. Are things getting any easier? Are there new tools or trends helping with all this evaluation?
Absolutely. The field is moving fast here because everyone recognizes how important and sometimes difficult this is. We're seeing a whole ecosystem of specialized tools emerging.
Like what?
You might hear names like TrueLens or Ragus, maybe Helm. These are frameworks and platforms designed specifically to help automate and standardize parts of the LLM evaluation process. They provide specific metrics and ways to track performance over time.
Okay, so tools to make the job a bit more manageable. Yes.
And alongside that, we're also seeing more open evaluation leaderboards. These are public platforms where different models are benchmarked against standardized tests, allowing for more transparency and comparison.
So people can see how different models stack up?
Kind of, yeah. It provides a reference point. And another exciting trend is the development of better, more fine-tuned judge models, those LLMs use for evaluation that we talked about earlier. Researchers are specifically training models to be better at assessing the quality, safety, and honesty of other LLM outputs.
So the judges themselves are getting smarter.
Hopefully, that's the goal, making automated evaluation more reliable.
That all sounds really positive. It's good to know the industry is working on making this crucial step more robust and maybe a bit less painful.
Definitely. It's a very active area of research and development. As these models get used more widely, the need for solid valuation only grows.
So if we were to boil this all down, what's the main thing you want people listening to take away from our deep dive today?
I think the absolute key message is that thorough ongoing evaluation isn't, an optional extra. It's not just a nice to have. It is fundamental for using these large language models successfully and responsibly in the real world.
Right.
That really impressive demo we saw, that's just the starting line. The true test, the real measure of an LLM, is its consistent performance, its fairness, its safety, and ultimately its usefulness day in, day out.
That's such a critical point to hammer home. It's easy to get dazzled by the capability, isn't it? But the real value, the actual impact, comes down to how it holds up in the messy reality of everyday use.
Exactly.
Thinking about all these different evaluation angles, AI, judging AI, humans giving feedback, checking against known answers, tracking business results, it really makes you think. As this technology gets woven more and more into everything we do, what's an aspect of deploying AI, maybe an overlooked aspect that you think will become increasingly critical, something we really need to get right, that perhaps we aren't focusing on quite enough just yet?